Got questions? Ask Fred. What questions do you have about creating a product or app? That's what we're talking about today. I have Fred Cary, who is co-founder and executive chairman of IdeaPros today, and I am Tessa. I'm with the marketing team, and we have so many questions that were submitted in advance. But I do see your comments over on the side right now, guys. So definitely type in any questions. We will try to get to them, but any of the ones that were submitted early, they are on our docket first. So I'm so glad you guys are here. And Fred, we're going to dive in. We have a lot to cover.
Oh, good.
We have a lot of questions, but they really fell into some pretty standard buckets for us. They're kind of the different development stages, really. So we're going to start at the beginning on our questions, starting with our patents, right, Fred? First, patents, and we have a couple resources I'll pop in as we go. But the three main questions that we had for patents really revolved around, do you have to have an invention? Do you have to have a patent to be able to share your invention with anybody?
Well, is that all three of them?
It's that and some people that want to sell their rights that don't have a patent yet. So they want to sell or they want to share their ideas. And that's pretty much it in a summary from Patricia, Barry, and James. Thank you for submitting your questions.
Okay. If you've watched me on the show before, you know that I hate patents. Patents in the beginning of a process. I hate provisional patents in the beginning of a process. And I also hate you talking to people about your idea with or without patents. So let me just say this. Number one, you are not going to sell your idea with or without a patent if it's just an idea. It's not going to happen. Think about it. When we wake up and we think we've invented something or come up with something that we think is really unusual and revolutionary, who are we going to go to? You're an individual. For the most part, you don't have any connections. You don't have the back door to some CEO in a big conglomerate multinational organization. You're going to have to go through the same thing anybody else with an idea has. You're either going to go to one of those licensing companies, which you do not want to do. You will not see anything from them. Anybody who promises you a patent and a licensing deal, forget about. So the only other choices you have are to go online and to submit to all these big companies who say they will take a look at your product. The chances of somebody looking at that and giving you a call and sitting by with a check is really just about zero. So that's the one problem. You're not going to get, with or without a patent, you are very unlikely to get somebody to give you a whole bunch of money just for your idea. Doesn't happen. Number two, can I talk to people about my ideas without a patent? It depends on who you talk to. Number one, I've already said I don't like patents in the very beginning, and I'll tell you why. Let me dig into that a little bit. When you have a patent, even a provisional patent, which anybody can get, I've said before, I could go today and register a patent for air, and I would get a provisional patent for air. Because it's only rubber stamped. It's only a time place holder. It doesn't mean that somebody in the patent office looked at it and said, oh my God, that's an amazing idea. Let's patent air. No, they just stamp it. You've sent information in, they put a stamp on it, and that's your placeholder. You have 1 year to file a utility or a design patent or both, and that's your timestamp to say, I thought of this idea and wanted to protect it a year earlier, and so your timeline runs from when you filed that. The chances of you not being an engineer, not being a manufacturer, not understanding design elements, you coming up with a design that is going to be A, manufacturable, B, engineered properly, you can reverse those two, C, available at a cost point where people can use it, and D, designed in such a fashion that will make it a product that people will want and will want at an affordable price point. So the likelihood is you have a 99% chance of filing something that's pretty much worthless. And you're gonna have this sense of protection from this but you're not protected because under the patent rules, if you file a patent for something that turns out not to be manufacturable, then that patent gets thrown out. And if there's a big company making something similar to what you have, they'll challenge you all day long, and that will be thrown into the ether as if it never existed. So.
Right. And we did a really big blog and show about confidentiality and really broke down, I just put it in the chat for you guys. We really broke down like changes in the law that make what Fred's describing and why provisional patent is so risky if you don't know exactly what you're filing for. And then you haven't really mentioned it in so many terms, but your competitors are, as soon as you start releasing these things, you're saying how you're doing that. And
Sure.
You don't want to put that information out there because it is possible for someone to duplicate it. If you didn't do things in the right order or didn't have that manufacturable product. So check out that blog in particular. We have more on our website about confidentiality and how to protect your idea a little bit before you right, Fred, you want people to sign the confidentiality agreement, which protects them and their idea, but you don't want them to necessarily run and get a patent at the store or at the patent office.
Anybody who's a partner of ours knows how I feel about patents. You don't want to, why don't we answer this question? It wasn't really asked, when do I go get a patent? When do I get a provisional patent?
That is the question they should have asked.
Do that at the point where you've gone through the engineering process. You know that you have something that's manufacturable. Your marketing research has told you that's something that people want. That's when you file it. In the meantime, you need to keep it quiet. You need to keep it confidential. And you don't want to go talking about all your friends and strangers and start posting on Instagram or Facebook about your new golden widget that's going to come out in a year and a half, because there is a chance somebody could copy it. It's probably unlikely, but there is a chance. So you want to keep low, but no patent stuff until you know that what you have can be made, can be sold, and is available at a reasonable price, and people are going to really want it. So that's much later in the process.
Perfect. Well, that answers those three questions, I think, pretty well. If you did have any other questions about patents, please type it into the comments and we'll try to loop back around at the end for sure. So the next set of questions are about money. So it's a big it's an area of tension for a lot of people, especially when they're beginning this process. So there are so many, it's like a dozen questions. So I'm just going to pick out a couple and let Fred kind of try to encompass all of you. So Chris, Martin, Kelly, Mike, Carmelo, Paige, Ian, Raquel, all of you, Shelly, Alicia, thank you so much for submitting your questions. They're getting answered by Fred right now. So the big picture is, what's the minimum amount of money that really, what do inventions cost to bring to market? And that's like one of the base level questions that we're being asked. And
how to get money to do that?
And then that's the next question. And how do I find that money?
So we tell people that for a small to moderate nationwide launch, you're really looking at spending between $500,000 and $1 million if you want to actually go to market and actually have something that's successful. Of course, for $20,000, $50,000, you can have a small boutique that you open up in the corner of the internet somewhere, and you can start selling a couple $1,000s worth of stuff a month. We're not saying that's a bad idea for everybody, but if you want to have a launch that is nationwide, even a small one, you're looking at $500,000 to $1 million. How do you get that money? Obviously, that's a lot of money to raise, and that's one of the first questions that we ask anybody who wants to partner with us. Is this something that you're going to do with or without us? Because if we partner with you in IdeaPros, and I think there was a side question as to how much it costs to work with IdeaPros. But if you partner with us, we will reduce 75% or more of what it costs to do a nationwide launch, and we'll do all the work to support the rest of what your budget would have been. But if you're not doing it with us, and let's just suppose it's a smaller one, let's go tiny and say it's 250,000 you have to raise. Something like 85% of entrepreneurs get capital from themselves, from their family, from their friends, or loans from their bank. That's the typical way that it's done. It seems like an overwhelming odd to raise that kind of capital. People do things like get a second mortgage, get a home equity line, borrow on their 401k plan if you're fortunate enough to have that much money. I see that that you're showing startups. Now this is even after you get a product going, right? Your very first efforts on moving a product along. Still, startup entrepreneurs get most of their money, as it shows, personal funds, another job, borrowing from friends, and then things like going to get a bank loan. You might be able to get an SBA loan if you've had another business that's been in business for a couple of years. There are resources like that. There, excuse me. We also point people to a process where you can, if you have a halfway decent credit score, you can borrow money at 0% interest for 18 to 24 months. There are a couple of big credit cards where you can get $50,000 and have that available for zero interest for 18 months. So you really have to scramble and figure it out. But the chances of you going to a venture capital firm and getting startup funding is zero. They're not going to do it unless you're a business that's operating and you've probably got $1 million in sales or more. The chance of going to an angel group is close to zero because you need to have everything laid out. You need to have done your marketing, your positioning, your consumer surveys, your design elements, understanding where you're going to sell it, who you're going to sell it to, how much it's going to cost, how you're going to make money, how you're going to distribute, where you're going to manufacture, what are the shipping costs, where are you going to store these things, and how are you going to go to market, how are you going to advertise, who are you going to partner with. You need to have that all laid out before anybody's going to really give you a penny. So you got to find the money yourself. You got to find a couple of buddies, sit around, have a couple of beers, get everybody to work together. But it's really a bootstrapping effort at this point. And again, you can attempt to partner with us, and that really cuts the cost way down. But this shows about all entrepreneurs, and not that many can partner with us because we have our own limited resources. And we've had over 45,000 applications and accepted about 290,000 people. Oh no, 290.
I'm like, whoa, our workload is just
5 people for every application. About
well,
290
I think what Fred's definitely run through a lot of things that are needed. And so if you're starting to feel your blood pressure go up a little bit right now, just take a couple deep breaths and know that we're here every Friday at noon Pacific time with resources to make that a little bit less stressful for you. But what Fred is talking about as far as the big picture of what needs to be made and funding wise and how IdeaPros helps with that, that's because of our team. And I just wanted to go into that, Fred, just a little bit. And that's because we have our team of experts that we've already built that team, and we work, we can basically, Fred explains it way better than I do. So Fred,
Yeah, sure.
How is it that we are able to reduce that by 75% for people?
Well, again, I don't like talking about our business.
I know, but I just had I could sense that everyone was feeling really stressed out. So I just wanted to say how.
Basically, because we have the same resources we use over and over again. We have an internal team. We have contractors that we're their biggest customer. And so because of this flow of intellectual information that happens every day at IdeaPros, we're able to keep costs down. We're able to use our partner contributions to help me defray our hard costs and costs that we have for materials and contractors and engineering groups and things like that. And so we can take advantage of our efficiencies, plus the many years I've been in business, that I understand what needs to be done and then what to do with it once you get it. So.
And Fred has connections. So I think that's the other big thing. He's networking. He has a show coming out on Edison Nation Everyday Edisons. I mean, he really knows and has these connections so that it makes it all come together for people way faster. And that's the other thing we didn't mention was time. But just on the money side, let's go back to that real quick, because a couple people did have a little different questions for you. So specifically, I mean, is that the resources that we have been talking about, are they available in Canada too? That was a question that someone asked.
No, there's nothing available in Canada. No, of course. Yeah.
Yes.
In fact, by the way, we have several Canadian partners. And again, not about IdeaPros. This is about all the entrepreneurs that can't partner with us for one reason or another. And let me go back to this big number that you're looking at. You don't have to raise that money all at once. You can take little steps, and you can have, what is next? What do I need? Where do I need to go? What elements do I need to prove? It may be that you only spend $10,000, and at the end of that $10,000, at the end of your research, you find out that it's not such a great idea after all, and you've lost $10,000 and you're ready to go to your next adventure. But the reality is, if you're an entrepreneur, if you have a great idea, you're going to find a way to make it work. And again, bootstrapping, doing it piece by piece, borrowing money from mom and dad, borrowing from your brother, your neighbors, getting people who are work associates with you involved in the process, getting new credit cards, all those things can start the ball rolling for you. But the one thing you can't do is cut corners. And we have a checklist on our website, IdeaPros.com website, that's really for any entrepreneur. And it really lays out step by step the things that you are going to need to consider when you do launch a product. You can bootstrap it. Maybe you're talented enough to do a lot of the stuff on your own, and that beats a blank for sure. But don't skip any of the steps that are on that checklist, because then you don't have any chance of making it.
Absolutely. And I will put the link in the chat. I also put a link to our bootstrapping show that we just did a couple weeks ago. So Good information in there. And we did have a whole... This, I guess, is going to be a bunch of resources, because we also have all of the funding resources, a list of places that you can go. So everything is in the chat. And if not, if you want any information, of course, if you go to our website and do get the checklist, then we'll keep you posted on new things, new resources that we add up there. So that, I think, covered everything in it. For the most part, covered the whole set of questions from a money standpoint. Do you want to go into the next section, or is there anything you want to cover still from that? I mean, crowdfunding's next, basically.
All right. So crowdfunding, everything I talked about and what you're going to need, you have to have done. You're not going to get crowdfunding money to be able to go do those things we were just talking about. In order to have a successful crowdfunding campaign, you need several things. You need to have an engineered product with a great marketing pitch around it. You need to strategically have yourself positioned away from your competitors. You have to know the sweet spot for your potential customer base. You have to have pricing. You have to have the discounting that you're going to offer for crowdfunding. You have to have a prototype, an actual physical prototype that what they call looks like, acts like. Some rude prototypes will just demonstrate how a process works and it won't look anything like the finished product. When you do crowdfunding, it's a requirement that you have a prototype that looks like what the finished product is going to be and acts like what the finished product is going to be. You have to have all those things together before you can even think about starting crowdfunding. So you've done all that. Then what happens? You need an agency. You can't do that by yourself, because over 70% of all crowdfunding campaigns get zero. And they get zero because people try to do it on their own. I have this great golden widget. I'm putting it on Kickstarter or Indiegogo, and nothing happens. You have to build up this huge audience. You have to collect emails for 3 months before you even start your campaign. You have to have great materials. You have to have videos. You have to have photos. You have to have perks along the way, depending on how much money people are going to give you. And without all those pieces in place, with a really sophisticated marketing campaign manager, you don't have a chance. So crowdfunding is for people who have done everything to get to the point where they're almost ready to launch their product, and they're going to be using this infusion of capital from their future customers in order to fund the manufacturing run that's going to be required to get going.
And we have, of course, we have a show about crowdfunding that we did as well with a crowdfunding specialist and Fred both. We had both of us on for Simon Solotko's crowdfunding episode. And Leticia, can you pop that into the chat for me? Because I cannot find it for the life of me, but it was just a couple weeks ago. So we'll get that in there for you. Great. Well, then, so we've covered crowdfunding, we've patents, money, and crowdfunding. And now we're going to move into the next phase, which is manufacturing. So we had some basic questions. And Ben, thank you for your question about crowdfunding, by the way. So manufacturing, Dave, Kip, Carmelo, and Larry all had questions about basically what happens next. How, you need a prototype to go to the next phase, right? So you have to do prototype, then you have to go manufacturing, and then you go into distributing. So what does that look like for the average product on the market?
First, Michael Young asked the question whether we do crowdfunding. We are associated with two of the largest crowdfunding organizations in the country, well, in the world, actually. They've collectively raised probably $250 million in crowdfunding. So as part of an engagement and partnership, that is something that we can talk about. So again, manufacturing, the components of manufacturing.
And what's the effective way to do that, to get to manufacturing?
The best way to get to manufacturing is through, if you don't have any other approach, is through an engineering connection. Most of the best engineering companies have direct lines with manufacturers, and when they design a product, they'll often do so hand in hand with that manufacturer because they understand the limitations of that manufacturer's equipment. They understand what that manufacturer's capabilities are, what their capacities are, and they'll try to design with the appropriate manufacturer within those realms. Just trying to find a manufacturer by yourself is really, really difficult. You can go on Alibaba and look, and the chances are you're going to get ripped off, or you're not going to get, and no offense, Alibaba, this is not about you, but somebody coming in without any type of connections is very likely to find the wrong people that are not really manufacturers. They're middlemen. You can strike a deal, and then a month later on a cargo ship, you're going to get a bunch of product that doesn't look anything like what you wanted. So there's no easy way to do that. You have to have relationships. There are groups in the US and otherwise, American groups that can help you with Chinese manufacturers, for example, or it can help you with Mexican manufacturing. But by the time you've gone through this whole process, and if you've done engineering the right way, you have connections there through that engineering firm. That's the best way to do it. I would also say, don't ever take the first thing they tell you as being Bible. They're going to give you a minimum order quantity. They're going to give you the cost it's going to be. They're going to give you kind of the excess costs for spoilage. They'll have it all laid out for you. Don't say that's good. Don't say yes. Fight back. Work with them, especially when you're dealing with Chinese manufacturers. They like a good fight, and you just let them know that you're there for the long run and you want to use them. But there's no way that you're going to be able to go live with the types of numbers that they are giving you. And shop around. If you have access to more than one manufacturer that is relevant for you, try to get 2 or 3 quotes and you can start comparing. But again, connection, that's the best way to make sure you're going to a good manufacturer and getting a reasonable cost who has the capacity to fulfill your product runs as you grow your company.
Great. I think we're getting a lot of extra little love and thumbs up right now. So thank you on that, Fred. It sounds like you answered a lot of questions that people needed. So perfect. I don't think there's any, let me see if there's anything. I mean, manufacturers will not go off of a patent only, right? You have to have the real item. You can't just go from patent over to manufacturing.
Well, you don't necessarily have to have a prototype when you go to manufacturing. And in fact, a lot of times when you show up with your engineering work and a prototype, it's going to change. because a manufacturer is going to look at it and they're going to say, hey, this is all wonderful, but within the capabilities of the machinery I have, we cannot do this, or this other thing. Therefore, we're going to use our own engineering and we're going to recommend these tweaks, these changes, so that we can use it most effectively within the equipment we have in place. So you definitely need to go there with complete engineering schematics, something that is duplicatable, something that's manufacturable. And there are some manufacturers that will actually do that engineering work for you. You really have to be well connected to have that happen. But again, once you get to manufacturing, even the best intentions from the best engineering companies, you're going to see some tweaks and changes almost for certain. And they'll typically do a small run first. They might do 100 units for you to check and see the quality, whether it's working right or not. And that's also part of this same process of having prototypes.
Great. And Alicia has a great question. I didn't see many people that asked any questions about apps. So, you know, for those app people that don't have a manufacturing step, well, Alicia, if you have a specific question, type it in and we'll see if we can get to it.
I think what she says, there is no manufacturing step. That's wrong. There is, Alicia. It's just, think about it. Not everything that you manufacture is this. Sometimes what you manufacture lives in here. And an app it's a physical product. It's manufactured. It's done in a different way, right? You use engineering. How do you use engineering? You have a design team that does your front end, which is your user experience, right? What's it going to look like? How's it going to respond? What buttons do I push? And then you have the back end. And the back end is all that database work, how you connect all these widgets together. It really is, if you think about it, it's a manufacturing process, because the only way that app is going to work is if you have everything working in the background, your databases, how they communicate with each other. When I go onto a website, a shopping website, and I want to put in my information, how does it collect my information? How does it store my credit card stuff? How does it display to me the things that I'm most interested in? What happens when I push the button to buy something? What database does it go to? How does it inform my group that does all the distribution for me? How does it get in the shopping cart? How does FedEx get notified and come pick up a package that I put together for you? All those things you can think of as manufacturing. And those are the types of things that all have to be in play and working perfectly for your app to function on the outside.
So such a good question. Michael, I'm actually going to put yours up here. Michael's one of our partners too. Can you patent an app and idea?
God, Mike, I wish you hadn't asked that question. You actually can, but it has to be, it's difficult because it has to be something that is really, for anything that you want to patent, it has to be something that's not obvious. You're basically with a utility type patent, right, or a design patent. The utility patent, you are patenting ways certain things work together and what that outcome is. And it has to be novel. It has to be something that the average person is just not going to say, oh, wow, hey, here's a bottle. Let me invent a top for the bottle. It has to be something that's different and unique for it to be patented. You can do that with an app, but it is a lot harder to do so. You can look at doing design patent elements if the way that you present information is way different. And you certainly have copyright and trademark rights as well. Every single thing that you write that goes in the different screens in an app, you copyright. In fact, with copyright law, as soon as you publish something, it's copyrighted, even without you filing. But I would suggest that you do so. So there is intellectual property protection you can get with an app, much harder to get a patent.
Didn't mean to blindside you, but that's actually a great question that we've covered in some past shows before. So, okay.
I'm blindsiding you, so that's good.
I know he's like, I'll get you later. Don't you worry. So now we've gone through manufacturing questions, and now we're on to marketing questions. David, Mary, and Russell, I know you guys had some questions specifically about how to promote a website specifically, or Mary's was a little bit more in depth. So I'm going to hold off and say, Fred, what do you recommend as far as marketing a website that I'm assuming, because the question wasn't super clear, has a product on it? And I can take it too if you need me to.
It's not that I need you to, but I do welcome your opinion as well. It's just that question is, it's like, how do I drive a car question. It's very, very broad, right? So when you're marketing anything, it could be way different depending on what you're marketing, right? You could have a product that's suitable for other businesses, and you're going to market it in one way. You can have a product that's a very wide consumer niche product, like water.
You have a lot of water around you.
You're going to market that in a completely different way. So the question's a little bit vague, but let me say this. The process that I like to follow for any type of company, for any type of product, is several-fold. You start, and by the way, Mike, who asked that question about apps, is the perfect example. We should have a show with
Yes.
Mike in the future, because he's about ready to launch his app. The first thing you do is you need to get warm and fuzzy with the people who are going to buy your stuff in the future, without letting them know that that's going to be happening. In fact, we have a show on that too.
Yes, we just did that one. I'll pop that link in too.
And the way that you do that is you join Facebook groups, you look for influencers on Instagram in areas where your new product will become relevant when it's ready to go out, and you start becoming yourself known, writing posts, associating with big influencers, trying to get people to follow you. You're not telling them about your golden widget at this time, but you're making yourself become relevant by the type of information and knowledge that you are showing, and you start building your community of people. Mike followed that advice perfectly. He associated with 3 different groups on Facebook, and in fact, he took over one of the groups. He ended up becoming the administrator of a group that has I think it had 15,000 when he took it over, has over 22,000 people right now. He's the boss of. He's the administrator of a group that is going to really love his app when it's available, and now he's very, very relevant, and he has a whole bunch of people watching him and looking at him. So those are the first things I recommend. But the question was about the website. The only way you get traffic to a website is by having your built-in audience, like we were just talking about, or by driving traffic to that website. Otherwise, you've created something, it's beautiful. I've described it as that big, beautiful new star up in the sky. We're going to look up in the sky, nobody's going to see it. You need to have a telescope, you need to be trained right on that star, and you need to be focused in on that. How does that happen? That happens by spending money. That happens by writing articles. One of the things that we do, like with the blogs that we have, we're going to really start doing that. We're going to offer it up to Entrepreneur Magazine and other relevant periodicals, and you can get published on those sites. So you can write blogs and you can start publishing yourself. And if you don't have a whole lot of money, but you do have really good writing skills and you are an expert in the field, you can start getting picked up. And all of a sudden there's 1 million people looking at your website because you wrote this blog that was picked up by some other organization that has a whole lot more followers. But you have to spend money, or you got to start working with influencers who will drive traffic there to you. Those are the best ways. Otherwise, you're just not going to be able to drive the traffic. And you need to drive smart traffic. You can't just have this thing to drive everybody in the world to your website. You need to figure out who's my customer. Let's suppose you start with Facebook advertising. You can go in Facebook and you can pick, I want people between these ages, I want people living in these zip codes, I want people with these interests, and you can market right to that target group that you really want. So be prepared to at least spend a few $1,000s a month in your marketing efforts if you want to drive people to your website Otherwise, you can have the best product in the world, and there's not going to be anybody that shows up there.
And Fred will say it over and over and over, in at least to the IdeaPros team, but to partners as well. And that's that you have to have a strategy first, and then you can do the tactical things. So get really clear on your target market and your pain points so that your website and all of your materials can speak to it. Because if you don't have that, they're just, like Fred said, it's not good traffic. It's not a good match. And that makes ads cheaper, and it makes the target, them convert better, and you don't spend as much. So I know we went way late, guys, but I'm so glad that you guys were all here. We had a huge, huge turnout. Thank you all for being here. Yeah.
I don't want to lose sight of what you just said. There's something that is really important here for everything that you do. Everything, your product design, the manufacturers you choose, your advertising, your website. Figure out who you are first. Figure out what the essence is of your organization. What do you stand for? Are you Starbucks? Are you 7-Eleven? Are you Apple? Or are you some just no-name computer company? Figure out who you are. And then that needs to trickle down. You go from who you are, what's your culture, what's your strategy as an organization, what are the tactical things that you are going to do to implement those strategies. And then when you get right to the bottom, make sure that the way you're driving traffic is all the way consistent to your essence as an organization. You don't want to just start throwing ads out because you think they're cute or cool or people are going to respond to them. Does this ad represent me and represent my company and represent my product? If it doesn't, don't use it. Doesn't matter if you drive 1 million people with an ad if 999,999 of them are not going to buy your product. Okay, so be consistent, find your heart, find your brain, and make everything you do work in conjunction with both of those things.
I love it. That was a great final thought, actually, Fred, unless you have any others. That was brilliant. Thank you guys all so much for being here. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please hit the bell so you can get reminders. And we're here every Friday at noon Pacific time, no matter how close it comes.
And if you have any other questions that you think are really important that we didn't cover, just drop them over here, and Tessa will stay up all night long answering.
I'm actually the next hour or so. So definitely, guys, let us know, share it out, and let other entrepreneurs have this information too. So we'll see you guys next week. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks for coming. Bye-bye, folks.
Bye.